Hi, everyone. This is Robert Jackson, and thank you for tuning in to the podcast. This is another video interview. So, if you guys want to check out my socials, I'll include everything at the end of this video interview. So today we're going to be talking to a very special guest who is sitting right beside me in the corner. You've heard him on various shows and a lot of different franchises over the years. He's been in Transformers, he's been on X-Men, Galaxy High, Pac-Man, Recess, and numerous credits that he has. And he's in a lot of different video games, movies, and whatnot. So, why am I doing all of this talking? I might as well just let this gentleman over here introduce himself, and yeah, we can get this show going. So,
All right.
welcome to the stage, Mr. Neil Rose.
Actually, it's Neil Ross, but you're close.
Oh, don't worry.
Yes,
Yeah,
Neil Ross is the name, and voiceover is the game, and we can take it from there.
of course. Thank you for joining me, Neil. It's a huge pleasure of having you on today.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So, I guess with all of that said, we can just pretty much talk about, what you've been up to and how has this whole, I guess, quarantine, pandemic lifestyle been treating you? And yeah, any fun projects that you want to talk about? That is not under NDA, of course.
Well, that's the problem. So many things are under non-disclosure agreements, and I'm terrified of saying the wrong thing and then having to let them have my first born child, which would be a bit awkward because she's a little too old for that sort of thing. Anyway, um, it's been, I suppose, like everybody in the world, my life has been affected. Luckily, the technology had come along by the time the pandemic hit to where you can do a lot of what I do from the house. I have a home studio, and people can actually tap into that studio, and I can record from home. But it's a sort of a double-edged sword because I sure don't miss the driving, but I sure do miss the people. A lot of the joys of being in the voiceover game was these marvelous people that you get to meet and work and interact with. And I just haven't had hardly enough of that lately. What are some things I can tell you about? I've been the announcer for the last few years on a show called Press Your Luck, which runs on the ABC network, and I'm sitting here with fingers and toes crossed, waiting to find out if it's going to be picked up for another season. It runs in the summer, and hopefully it will be, and life will be good. But other than that, recently I've narrated some stuff for Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and there's a couple of those shows that are up on YouTube right now, and I highly recommend them. It's a two-part show actually called Triumph at Saturn, which is not about a cigar smoking dog that insults planets. It's about an amazing mission, the Cassini mission to Saturn and its rings and its moons. And I think they're not just because I'm involved. I think they're wonderful shows. So I think if you put Triumph at Saturn into your YouTube search bar, wonder awaits you. I highly recommend it.
Awesome. I'll definitely check those out in due time. Or at least in my little spare time. But yeah, nice that you're staying productive and busy like everybody else during these difficult times. And I know there's a lot that we could talk about it, but yeah, specifically for this podcast, we want to discuss about your body of work and just pretty much the industry in general and how it's changed over the course of, gosh, I want to say like close to 4 or 5 decades that you've been working. So, and possibly longer. I could be wrong, but yeah, let's get right into this. So, um, like I discussed earlier, like I mentioned, you've been on shows like Voltron, GI Joe, and Transformers, and do numerous of video games that we'll go over in just a moment. But yeah, we can probably start with radio because you've started radio when you finished school, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, let's talk about your radio career and pretty much how you got started in the business.
Yeah, well, radio started not too long after I got out of high school. I am I'm not a college dropout because I never dropped in. I got hooked on the radio business. I listened to the radio as a child, and I was just old enough to catch the tail end of what was called the golden age of radio, when radio functioned more or less the way television does now. That's where all the comedy shows were, the dramas, the detective shows, the quiz shows, the game shows, what have you. And I heard the tail end of that, and I was endlessly fascinated by all the different voices and accents and things that I would hear, and I would try to reproduce them in the privacy of my room. And then I discovered rock and roll music, fell in love with it, started to tune in those kinds of stations. Had I had a shred of musical talent, I probably would have been a musician and had a completely different life, but I couldn't learn how to play any kind of an instrument to save my life, and it just wasn't destined to be. So I'm now listening to these top 40 radio stations, as they were called in those days. And I began to focus more and more on the guys, it was all guys back then, who spun these tunes and, did all the clever platter chatter, disc jockeys, in other words. And I thought, gosh, that would actually be kind of a fun thing to do, I think. And the more I thought about it, the more obsessed I became. And eventually, as I said, shortly out of high school, I ended up on the radio and did that for the next 20 some odd years. Just a, journeyman disc jockey production guy moving from station to station and city to city, gradually becoming somewhat disenchanted by the business for a number of reasons. And around that time, I discovered this business called voiceovers existed. I had wondered for a long time, who are these people who I hear voicing commercials? Who are these people I hear doing the characters in cartoon shows? What is that all about? And I sort of had this working theory that it's probably a bunch of on camera people making a few extra bucks on the side, which probably was true in some cases. But one wonderful day, I was informed, no, 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 there's a whole business called voiceovers. That's all these people do is voiceovers. They have agents, they have a union. It's a thing. And I thought, I want to be a part of that thing. And so in those days, you pretty much had to either be in New York or Los Angeles. So I managed to wangle a job in Los Angeles, still on the radio. And I started to go to workshops, started to look for an agent. And it took about 4 or 5 years. But finally, one glorious day, I realized the tail is now wagging the dog. I'm making twice as much money outside the radio station as inside the radio station. It's time for me to bid a fond farewell to radio and jump into voiceovers full time. So that's what I did in 1985. And it was a very different business in those days. It was a very well kept secret. I mean, now with the internet, everybody knows everything and there are no secrets, but really very few people knew voiceovers even existed. And the talent pool was relatively small. I think there were just a few hundred people doing it in LA when I got here in the late 70s. And now, of course, it's completely different. The cat's out of the bag. Everybody knows about voiceovers and everybody thinks they can get into voiceovers. And with the internet and a lot of these relatively inexpensive audio programs, you can kind of function. And now there are just thousands and thousands of people who want to do this. How many of them are succeeding at this point? I don't know. I suspect it's not that different from when I started out. Even though there was a relatively small talent pool, there was an even tinier percentage of that talent pool that actually worked on a regular basis. The rest of us were more or less wannabes. And I think it's probably the same way still. There's a awful, now the wannabes are nationwide, but the number of people who are actually making, a decent living at voiceovers, I suspect is once again a very tiny, tiny percentage. So that's a brief overview. I don't know if you want to drill down with some more specific questions or.
Well, I mean, it's a really interesting story. So because you've been on the in the radio business for a very long time, and also what's really interesting is how you were actually originally from the UK. So, did you find that adapting? Uh, so when you moved over to America, like, did you find that having an so I know I asked this to another guest yesterday. So did you feel like it was so how was the process of like having to adapt to the whole American, I guess, lifestyle, being originally from the United Kingdom?
Well, you're absolutely correct. Yes, I was born in England, but I came to the new world as a very young child. And originally we settled in Canada. I think that was a compromise. I don't think my mother, I think my father always wanted to come to the States, but he could only talk my mother into Canada, which was, well, it's still part of the empire. So I suppose it's not as horrible as it sounds. And so we spent about 10 years in Montreal, Canada. And then my dad took a vacation, visited his relatives in Los Angeles, and came back telling tales of this land, this wondrous land of milk and honey, where life is perfect and you can go swimming in the ocean in the morning and be up in the mountains skiing by the afternoon, which is theoretically possible. I don't think that many people have actually done that, but it is theoretically possible. And perhaps most important to him, the liquor stores were open on Sundays. So, I mean, life was perfect. And he wanted to move to Los Angeles, and he gradually wore my mother down. And we got here in 1950, late 57. And that was a tough transition. You know, going to Canada, I was a little kid. And I really have no memory of England to speak of. But leaving Montreal, Canada, where we had to, we called them junior high in those days. It's now called middle school. You had to show up in a blazer and have a tie on. You know, if you were sort of a really radical hippie type, you would not wear the jacket. You would put a sweater on, but you still had to have the tie. That's that's how we knew who the hippies were. They were the ones with the sweaters. And I mean, if you showed up to school without your tie on, they'd send you home. And I end up in Long Beach, California, and it looked like a scene from Grease, the movie Grease with John Travolta. I don't know if you remember that, but all the guys with the black leather jackets and the Levi's and the construction
Oh yeah,
boots.
yeah.
I said, are these students or workers? I mean, I showed up the first day in my blazer and my tie, and people are looking at me like I'm insane. You know, what kid would dress like that in California? I actually had kids come up to me in the hall and say, what are you? Are you a teacher? Even they didn't dress that well. So I realized I would have to make some adjustments, and I did. And well, I took it from there, you know. And the other thing that astonished me was all these people playing basketball. Because up in Canada, I don't know how it is now, but in those days, that was a game girls played because they were too cowardly to come out in the winter and play hockey with the guys. So they'd be in the nice warm gym playing basketball. I thought basketball was just for girls. And here are all these guys shooting hoops. And I go, why are they playing this girls' game? What's the deal? I
Yeah.
gradually figured out what was going on, but there was a little bit of an adjustment there.
Oh yeah, trust me. Yeah, it's really interesting that you mentioned how for basketball, how a lot of girls were playing it. I'm pretty sure that like right now, I mean, I can't really speak for like all of America, but here in Los Angeles, you see a lot of like guys and girls playing. So it's pretty much like it's a fair play for everyone. But I think
Yeah.
basketball kind of started getting it really started taking off around like 80s and 90s where we had stuff like, Michael Jordan, the Space Jam movie that came out back in the day, and then that really just brought a lot of interest in like basketball, but I don't know. I'm not really, I'm not an expert, and I'm not really a sports guy. So I mean, somebody can correct me on this later on. I know that's probably gonna happen, but yeah, I mean, it's pretty much like um just one of those little interesting time periods where if you go back and like when you go back in the old days and how sports were, you know, how everybody was playing the sports, and when you go to now it's like everything's just kind of, you know, because with technologies is evolving and with everything that has just been evolving, I mean pretty much just for these last 2 years alone, I know that we've been seeing a lot more in game. Like, I mean, I know that stuff is opening back up. People are going into in person events, and also, let's see, they're having like conventions or like studios that are opening back up for voiceover work. So, yeah, we just don't really know what the future holds, but I mean, I'm just kind of, you know, just playing everything by ear. So it's really nice that, you know, you actually are able to like naturally can just flawlessly because I think a lot of people, because I've asked this on Twitter recently, where so what is something that you tend to struggle with during recording? It's and then I got some comments saying hiding my accent, which that seems to be something that a lot of people would like to work on. So with doing accents for, you know, various different projects, do you find that there's some sort of like technique or method on turning off, like when you have an American accent and then putting on like the transatlantic accent that you just demonstrated, or yeah, like do you have like any advice on how to properly control accents when you're doing like recording for like various projects for voiceover roles that people would like to would probably
Well,
gain some
there's
insight on?
I think there's sort of a standard American English, which the late great dialect doctor, guy named Robert Easton, he was one of the first that I became aware of. He was an actor, and he sort of developed this business where he specialized in accents, and that's pretty much what he did. After a certain point, he could, if you were an actor and you suddenly were assigned a role that involved an accent you didn't have, he would teach it to you. Or if you came from a particular region with a pronounced accent, he would help you lose that, or at least shave off the edges of it. But he said to, I interviewed him once and we were speaking back and forth. And I said, what accent do I have? What accent do you have? And he said, oh, well, we speak media ease. What he meant was it's the sound you hear from anchor people coming from, you know, doing nationwide broadcasts. It's sort of become the, you know, standard American English accent. Although you go to different parts of the country and you hear all sorts of accents. So I mean, if you know, if you got a really pronounced Southern accent, you're going to have to find a way to talk the way I do if you want to do national commercials, unless they're specifically looking for that accent in the commercial. Um, I just always had this ability to mimic accents and voices. As I mentioned briefly earlier, it was just a spontaneous thing I did as a child. Nobody suggested, hey, do this. It was almost like a hobby. Um, you know, some kids build model airplanes, and I sat in my room and imitated comedians that I heard on the radio. It's, you
It's the
know,
way to go.
something grabs you. And I still spontaneously do voices around the house just to amuse myself. It's almost comforting. I was listening to an interview with
Mhm.
Dana Carvey, and he
Oh
talked about
yeah.
how he does voices just around the house with no thought of perfecting them for performance later in a club or anything. It's just, it amuses him, it comforts him. He said Daryl Hannah is the same way. Apparently, Daryl Hannah has this voice that he does, and it's not intended for performance. It's just, it's a strange compulsion you have to do it. And I think you almost have to be born with that ability. I don't know if anybody can teach it to you very much. As I said, some vocal coaches can teach you to get rid of a regional accent, that sort of thing. But if you just said, teach me how to listen to a person who has a German accent and then teach me how to reproduce that, I don't know what to tell you. It's just you either can or you can't. And if you can, then you can improve it through practice. But if you don't have that ability, my poor mother, who was an actress, couldn't do accents to save her life, never got rid of the English accent. I mean, she was in this country, God, how long was it? 50, 60 years, still spoke, very properly like this. And I'm so tired of people asking me where I'm from. I'm going to speak like an American now. And she couldn't. It was laughable what she did. So where I think I inherited it from my father's side. I had an uncle who could do accents. I mean, not professionally. He was, he had a regular job, but he could do accents and used to amuse the hell out of me. And I'm sure so that's probably where it comes from.
Yeah. Because I know a lot of people, they tend to figure out, okay, so I'm from the southern region, or like, oh, I'm from the eastern, but I just don't know how to. I can't really. I'm having a hard time trying to, because this spec says that I need to do like a general American accent, and
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like tricky because if somebody is from, like, I don't know, say New York, then they can't turn off, like, it's just, the way they talk, and they can't
Mm-hmm.
figure out how to, and they are trying to figure out how to. But then if the script comes for like an authentic New York accent, then it's just gonna come like, really natural, because that's pretty much where they grew up in. So it's like it just comes so if there's a character that is actually from where they're, like, if it calls for that specific dialect, then it's just going to come across, like, if they don't have to, try to hide it or anything, then it's just probably going to become, if it makes for more authentic performance, then that's pretty much good. That's cool. I just wanted to ask you this specific question, because that's pretty much what I've been hearing a lot. So I just wanted to have at least a little more insight about this little something that is very common for voiceover. So yeah, thank you for providing that. I actually didn't know this myself.
Yeah, I'm to anybody, anybody who wants to speak media ease, just watch a lot of television anchor
Oh yeah,
people on the
or
networks.
radio.
That's the one. That's what you need to shoot for. What knocks me out is I'm watching some uh, drama on television, and there's a guy who talks like this, and he's obviously a good old boy, and he looks and sounds just like a good old boy, and I'm buying it 100%. And then I look him up on the IMDb, and he's a damn Australian. You know? And I'm just, but apparently they tell actors in Australia, if you want to have a major movie career or television career, you have to perfect an American accent, and not just an American accent. You've got to do regional dialects, and they do it, and they work their asses off, and they get these jobs, which is one of the things I always tell people. Damn, get ready, prepare. This is work. Uh, if the phone isn't ringing and nobody wants you to work or audition, then damn it, you need to put in the hours practicing, learning an accent, unlearning an accent, whatever it is. Just sitting home waiting for the phone to ring doesn't. You need to keep honing your instrument. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much a fair, advice that you could give for people when it comes to accents. So, yeah, I guess there's not really much else that I can say, but it is also very true with what you said. Putting in the time, the work, and the hours to perfect your craft, it's very common to hear in the business, because a lot of actors, and it's not just it doesn't have to apply for being an actor. I'm just saying, like, in general, if you're really good at something, if this is something that you're really serious about it and you really want to pursue this, it's going to take in, first off, it's going to, there's a lot of time and there's a lot of like practice, and there's so much like training that you need to do. And there's other areas and avenues that you could study, like taking classes, doing a lot of this work, and a lot of sometimes having the day jobs, working 9 to 5. In most cases, if you're, as long as you're really passionate and you seriously love what you're doing, and as long as you're putting in the work, it doesn't have to be very big, but like the consistent small steps that you take each day, it's still progress. So and pretty much doing a lot of these other hobbies while you're juggling alongside the work that you're doing, to keep yourself busy and just really putting in the time and working your butt off. Like, man, the results, like, I know it's super difficult and it's very hard. And I mean, it's always been hard. I mean, life is certainly not a walk in the park, but if you really genuinely put in, because I know that there's going to be times where you're going to face like a lot of roadblocks along the way, and you're going to hit a lot of obstacles. But when you hit, I don't want to say hit the jackpot, but the rewards that you get after working so hard on something, it just feels very rewarding in a way.
Oh,
And that's
absolutely.
just, yeah, definitely for sure.
The uh, the journey is its own reward.
Ernie, yeah.
But one of my favorite sayings comes from a movie producer named Robert Evans, who wrote a wonderful book called The Kid Stays in the Picture. And he defines luck as when opportunity meets preparation. And, you cannot control when opportunity is going to come along. You have no control over that, but you have 100% total control over preparation. And so you need to be preparing so that when that opportunity does pop up, you are prepared. Nothing is sadder than an opportunity meeting a lack of preparation, because that's not going to work. So, yeah, uh, preparation, work, and when opportunity meets preparation, yes, that's a wonderful feeling. Wonderful feeling. I remember, before I got up to Los Angeles, I would occasionally let people know that I had some ambitions to perhaps do work voicing animation someday, and they would just laugh at me. And I remember the first time that I got to work at Hanna-Barbera. I showed up and they had, the traditional gate with the barrier. And I said my name, and lo and behold, up went the barrier and in I went. And I thought, all you people who laughed, well, here it is. I got in here. And that was a great feeling. But fortunately, I had done the preparation.
Yeah, we're talking like the good old days where you were actually let in through a barrier and they let you in. We're like, yeah, where you go through past the security. Yeah, those. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like a little mini movie studio.
Oh
They had a
yeah.
guard and all the whole deal. It wasn't as big as Warner Brothers or anything, but it was, it was a good sized operation. Hanna Barbera. You felt like you were in showbiz
Pretty
when you
much.
got to go
Yeah.
in there.
Yeah. Speaking of which, this could become like the next a really good transition segue into the next topic we're going to be discussing about. So some of your earliest work, because you just mentioned brought up Hanna Barbera, and let's see, if I'm not mistaken, I think your first role was it was a salesman in an episode of Richie Rich. I could be wrong.
No, that's it.
Oh,
That was
okay.
not the
Yeah.
first. That was not the first cartoon work I ever did. The first stuff I did was for Wally Burr in a Spider-Man series that was done in the
Okay.
late
Yeah.
'70s, early '80s,
81.
and I was just playing incidental characters. But with Wally, it was a little different. It wasn't. Hanna-Barbera had this big building and the guard gate and all the rest of it. And the first time I worked at Hanna-Barbera, I thought I've finally arrived, surrounded by some of these voice actors that I'd only heard about. These were legends in the business, and now I'm in a room working with them. And yes, it was an episode of Richie Rich, and it was a pushy salesman whose tie gets caught in the door when they slam the door on him. And I think I only had 6 or 8 lines, but man, just getting to be in that room, wow, never forget it.
Yeah. And in Spider-Man, you played the Green Goblin, if I'm also not mistaken.
Yes, that was a much later iteration of the show. The original one I worked on, as I said, was in the late '70s, early '80s. This was Spider-Man that was done in the mid '90s. Spider-Man the animated series, I think, was the official title, and yes, I was the Green Goblin in that one.
Okay. Yeah, but then
And
you've
he
been work.
sounded like this. And I hope I didn't break anybody's speakers.
Oh wow, I was not expecting.
Nobody expected.
He just shows
But
up when you least expect him.
yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I was saying, okay. So then you also worked on shows like Pac-Man, the other Spider-Man Amazing show, and then I guess yeah, then moving on to G.I. Joe, where you played a bunch of characters on that show. That was pretty much one of the shows that you were more well, you were that was one of your more notable shows. You
Yeah,
played
my my
characters like
my four biggies are Voltron, GI
uh-huh,
Joe, Transformers,
Transformers.
and Spider-Man.
Oh
Those are the
yeah,
shows people reference most often.
yeah. Because you played a lot of characters in G.I. Joe, like there's Buzzer, Dusty, Heavy Metal, Monkey, and
Yeah,
just
I
wait.
think I played like 6 characters on that show. But of
Yeah,
course, the
and
the 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 big one was the character Shipwreck, much beloved by the audience and me. He was the salty sailor in the group.
yeah, I was also gonna ask, like, do you have like any favorite characters you've done over the years?
Oh yes, yes. Well, I'm fond of Keith in Voltron. That was the first more or less starring role I ever got in a series. And then Shipwreck has been hugely rewarded. I tend to like the characters the fans like, and so Shipwreck and GI Joe, Springer and Transformers, and of course the Green Goblin and Spider Man. Those are probably my favorite characters because they're the fans' favorite characters.
Yeah, and particularly for Transformers, because I know that the Transformers fan base it has a very large fan base. Because you see people specific not specifically, but like they just talk about, and that's what's really great about pop culture, where like we were just a bunch of kids and nerds just geeking out about our favorite toys, shows that we would watch. And that we would watch as kids from like the 80s, 90s, 2000s, and onwards. And Transformers is one of the biggest ones out there, because I know that you've also made guest appearances at a bunch of Transformer related events, like BotCon, and just a lot of
I just
conventions
did
that are,
TF Con last
oh
weekend
yeah, TFCon too.
in
Yeah,
Burbank. Yeah.
nice. Yeah, I've also recently had on my podcast Michael Bell, and he was also talking about his role in the Transformers franchise, and just talking about the impact that it had on just pop culture and how so many people just have really fond memories over the show to this day. And just hearing how much it had really impacted them, and yeah, just hearing the stories of how, like, Optimus Prime just pretty much helped them through these really rough times in life, like dark times. And
Hmm.
they pretty much say that like Peter Cullen and Frank Welker made their childhood. Like all of you guys pretty much made a lot of like those that grew up in the 80s, early 90s. Like Transformers was pretty much that was the show that pretty much got them into the franchise. So yeah, how would you say that Transformers, like, did you know at the time that it was really big and you think that it was gonna make like as large of an impact as it made like since the 80s or so and continuing up to this very day?
No, I don't think anybody did.
Yeah.
Though in those days, the common wisdom was that no show would last more than about 3 years, that its audience would outgrow it, and that nobody beyond the age of 18 would even look at animation anymore. So it was all for teens and children. And as I said, when the audience outgrew the show would go away. A new crop of kids would grow up, and they'd want a different show, their own show. And so, no, there was no thought that any of this would be remembered even 5 or 10 years later. I think the longest running show at that point was the Smurfs when they got 7 seasons. That was unheard of. The idea that a show like The Simpsons could be on the air for I don't even know what it is now, 30 plus years.
Oh yeah.
If you'd
Yeah.
suggested that back when we did those shows, they'd have said you're insane. It could never happen. But yeah, I know what you're talking about. The shows aired on weekday afternoons, and I think we sort of babysat an awful lot of latchkey kids. We just didn't know it at the time. And we have had many, many meetings with fans who just tell us, they tell stories of just horrible home life and terrible things happening. And all they had to hang on to was G.I. Joe and Transformers. And in a way, it taught them a certain kind of morality, a certain ethos. And they feel like they turned out better because of it. And I mean, I've heard stories and I'm close to tears as I'm listening. It's just amazing. And again, no, at the time we had absolutely no idea that any of this was going to happen. We just figured that here's another 3 year show, and then it'll be over and we'll move on to the next thing.
Yeah. Especially like I mentioned before, they have Transformer conventions now. And you recently just went to one last week in Burbank, which is pretty awesome. So it just goes to show you that the impact and legacy of this franchise, it's going to continue on for several more years. So we'll see what happens in the future.
Yeah.
um,
Well,
yeah.
I mean, our fan base, they're now in their mid 40s, I think.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And they're still hanging in there. It's astonishing. Astonishing.
Especially during these times, yeah, especially with Ward and everything. So I also wanted to talk about Batman the Animated Series because that is one of my favorite shows what that I watched as a kid. And you also played some at least a few characters on the show. I'm not sure if you like remember them very much, but I think you were like and I'm reading this off of Wikipedia, Dealer, Ratso, and Jake. And episodes I don't really remember, but yeah.
Yeah, I never had a regular recurring role in the Batman series. I just did a seemingly endless stream of thugs and henchmen and
So
what
incidentals.
have you, what are known in the trade as incidental
Yeah,
roles. I never, as I said, I never had a recurring role in that show, but I did
that's
work it
fine.
quite a bit.
Yeah. And you were still working in the 90s for like Fantastic Four, SWAT, yeah, Matt. Whatever. So you reset and you've even done some live action stuff. So tell me, like, do you find working in voiceover to be more fulfilling? Or like do you also think that working at some live actions like roles, do you also find
Well,
that to be pretty fun?
I don't know what you're referring to with live action. The only on camera thing I've ever done was the green newsman in the movie Dick Tracy.
Okay.
And I was on the set a lot and did a lot of takes, but not a whole lot of what I did made it into the movie. But that's the only on camera work I've ever done. So I can't really contrast the two. Michael Bell's done far more of both
Yeah.
sides of the coin, and his definition of voiceovers is no makeup, no memorization, perfect. You know, that's
Yeah.
probably that's probably what would destroy me at this point if I tried to do on cameras memorizing all that stuff. I don't know how people do it. I really don't.
Yeah.
I have a tough time remembering my phone number.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of happens sometimes. Oof. But yeah, yeah, and Michael was telling me about like when he actually worked on like it was a very incredible story of how he got to be on MASH. He was talking about going through like a lot of callbacks, and because as actors, we audition for like a lot of roles. And live action is no different. So if you really I'll definitely link the episode where he talks about how he got to be on MASH, because that was another show that I actually watched. Back when we had this channel called for you youngins out there, that's when we had this channel called TV Land. And that was pretty much the channel where you watched a lot of the classic shows from like the golden age of TV, like from 50s, 60s, 70s. That was a channel that my parents actually would watch, and they would let me watch some of it, some of the shows that were airing on there. So I got to talk with him about MASH and a few other ones that I can't really remember offhand. But yeah, and I also wanted to talk about the SpongeBob movie, which I actually did not know that you were the voice of Cyclops in the film until like literally a few months ago, which is honestly amazing.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't
I just
remember
wanted to
too
point
much
that
about
out.
that. He didn't have lines; he made
Yeah,
noises, and
like
so I,
laugh noise. Yeah, that's pretty much what I remember. But yeah, I actually didn't know that, so I just wanted to bring that up.
that is my only connection to SpongeBob,
Yeah.
unfortunately. But you do what you can. Yeah, that episode of MASH that Michael Bell was in, that's the first time I ever saw him. I didn't,
Right.
Michael Bell was a legend in the business. There was a time period where you couldn't turn on a television set for more than an hour without hearing him. He was on all kinds of
Everywhere.
commercials, and he was also voicing all kinds of animation. And, he was a legend, still is. And
Mhm.
I'm watching MASH one night, and this guy comes on the screen and starts talking. And I said, "Holy moly, that's Michael Bell." I didn't know he did on because he'd done a ton of on camera. I just hadn't focused on him before. And I suddenly realized, oh, that's what he looks like. I'll be damned. And then shortly after that, I met him, and you know, life went on. But yeah, no, I remember that MASH episode. As I recall, he played a pilot who was doing dangerous stuff and jeopardizing other people's lives, something like that. He played a bad guy.
Yeah. I guess this brings up an interesting question. Do you have like anybody that you've worked alongside with, whether it be clients or like other voiceover actors that you have a great amount of respect for in the business?
Oh, we could sit here and talk all day long. I mean, there are times
Like just
when,
people you look up to for like as inspiration, pretty much.
well, of course, virtually everybody that I met getting into the business, I really, I had no acting background, and I had done a radio comedy series that involved a lot of character voices, and I did most of the character work. And I thought I could do this, but I really had no formal acting training. And now I'm in the room with all of these folks who have had acting training and have been acting for a long time. And that's really where the rubber hit the road. And I spent the first, I don't know, year or two that I was doing it, expecting to get kicked out at any moment. You know, well, who is this? Some disc jockey you hired? Get rid of him. He's terrible. That didn't happen, but so yeah, I mean, I start naming names, and inevitably I'm going to leave somebody out. But I mean, there are times when I get in a studio with somebody like Frank Welker or Rob Paulson or Maurice LaMarche or many, many, many others, Jim Cummings, and I just think I'm just damn lucky to get to be in the same room as these people. They're so phenomenally gifted that it just takes your breath away. And I'm just lucky that I get sucked along in their wake, so to speak, because they're so talented. So yeah, I mean, Michael was a big inspiration to me, largely because in those days the baritone voices ruled the airwaves. They all wanted guys who sounded like this. And Michael, as you probably noticed, had this kind of high voice, but he managed to make it sound so darn friendly that when he did a commercial, you just couldn't help but jump off the couch and go buy that product. And I don't really have a baritone voice. I'm not a tenor. I don't know what the hell I am, but I thought, God, if he could make it, maybe there's some hope for me. And so yeah, he was a big inspiration for that reason. And I got to tell you, the voiceover community that I worked with, just lovely people. I always say it's like one and a half people in the business I didn't like. Everybody else was just wonderful and generous. There's no backbiting, there's no hostility, there's no jealousy. We're just having fun. And if you can show up somewhere, get paid to have fun, it doesn't get a lot better than that, I'll tell you.
Oh yeah. And also another one that I wanted to mention, Charlie Adler, because
Oh,
Charlie
Charlie,
also, yeah,
sure. Oh
yeah,
God, yes. Yeah, what a mind. I mean, he's just amazing. He's such a clever improviser and
oh
utterly
yeah,
hilarious. And yeah, yeah. Like I said, I'm leaving people out because I'm just forgetting.
yeah.
But
There's way too many.
yeah.
Yeah, but like Charlie though, I he was kind of one of the main inspirations that I wanted to go into performing in general because he has this really unique like way or mindset, or like he has this way of performing where it's it really comes from the heart, not from the I mean, it no, he says something on his website where acting is a feeling that you get from the heart. And it's like, wow, I actually never thought of it like that. Because before I thought it was just like something that I did for, just for amusement and just something that I would do like, for fun seas and stuff like that. But no, like when you really talk to a lot of these people, especially when you watch the documentary, like I know that voice. You just see a lot of these stars, some who have unfortunately are no longer with us, but a lot of people that have really took the time out of their busy schedules and do this huge documentary like this. It's just really nice to see how just I know that, like I mentioned before, there's a lot that goes into this field of voiceover, like getting into the business, but like just seeing all of these people just literally burst with enthusiasm and just seeing them really interact, talking about their careers and just talking about how much why they love doing what they love doing. And they're just incredibly humble and just so generous, like you said. Just some of the nicest people that you would find in Hollywood are voiceover actors, because they just really they really help people, particularly people who really go out of their way to inspire new up and coming actors and artists, to just not give up, do their best in life. And if this is something they want to do, then they just are just pretty much cheering you on. Like you said, there's no like backstabbing, there's no animosity towards one another. Everybody is just incredibly chill and kind, which is something that I was surprised at first at how like just incredibly nice everyone is. And like you said, there are maybe one or two people, but at the end of the day, it's just pretty much this whole industry is just they're rooting you on. They're your cheerleaders. They want to help you succeed. They want to see you succeed, and people are just doing it just for the sheer passion and the love they have for the craft of acting. If you're getting paid for it, then that's an additional bonus. But at the end of the day, it pretty much all comes down to like the the connections, the relationships you meet, the work that how much it really leaves an impact and it inspires others, and that's what pretty much what I really love about this field to begin with, and why I want to do something like this. Because if something that I do inspires others, then I know I'm doing at least something right,
Mhm.
and that's pretty much that's the gist of it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I'm led to believe it's very different in the on-camera world. Occasionally,
Oh
someone
yeah.
from the on-camera world will stumble
It
into
is.
our little world, and they're astonished at how little, how there's just none of the jealousy, the backbiting, the what have you, that apparently happens in the on-camera world. I don't know why that is. One woman years ago who used to do casting said, "Well, it's because you're not judged on your looks." I don't know if
Yeah.
she had a point there or not. But I don't know that it leads to conviviality. The thing I like about not being judged on my looks is if all I did was on camera, I would be in a very narrow pocket. I'm not sure what that would be, but it would be based on my face. And as it is in voiceovers, doesn't matter what you look like. You can be the hero, you can be the villain, you can be a monster, you can be a smurf. It's as long as you can come up with a sound that they think works for that character. Doesn't matter what you look like. And I know I wouldn't have had this range of characters if I had just pursued an on-camera career. No way.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, there was something else I was gonna say, but I kind of forgot. But I think it was something along the lines of like, um, especially like if you're doing like theater, or I don't know how it is in theater. I mean, I've only done a little bit of it before, like being up on the stage, so I don't really know how it is like professionally or going up into Broadway. I can imagine that it's very different. Like if you're doing Broadway, or like if you're doing uh like on camera, like movies, TV shows, etc. I know it's very different. I'm not really
Well,
too, no, yeah.
the thing about theater, of course, is you got to get it on take one every time.
Oh yeah, yep.
Uh, the
And a
the
lot of
beauty of
rehearsals.
Yeah, but the beauty of film and television is, I was just I forget who, but it was an on-camera actor, and he said one of the things he had to learn and that helped relax him was he was an early job. He was very new to the business, and he started to do a scene, and he was really nervous. And somebody, probably the director, took him aside and said, "Look, relax. We got a lot of film, you know. We'll get this on the second, third, fourth take. No pressure. Just have fun with it." And he thought, "Oh, okay, yeah, I get it. All right." And it's the same with voiceovers. You can always have another take. If Wally Burr's in charge, you are definitely going to have another take, and another after that, and another after that. But that's another story.
Oh boy.
Uh, but with theater, you got to be perfect every night, and that's got to be extraordinary pressure, I would think. I don't
Yeah,
know that I would enjoy that life, frankly. You know, the
yeah.
I remember hearing a story about a respected English actor who had played King Lear for years. He was renowned for his performance as King Lear, and he finally announced, "I'm not going to do this anymore." And how can you not do this? You're the Lear of our generation. And he replied, "I cannot scale Everest 9 times a week anymore." And I thought, yeah, that's it. I mean, is it 9 times? I don't know, 6 nights and plus 2 matinees. I mean, that's 8. I cannot scale Everest 8 times a week anymore. I mean, can you imagine a role like Lear? And on Saturday, you got to do it twice. Oh, God. I couldn't do it.
Yeah. I can't imagine. I cannot even imagine. But yeah, I guess spirit piggybanking back to earlier with the question where like the main where I asked Michael Bell like the differences when you're working on camera and voiceover. So like for video games, like specifically because I know you've done Mass Effect and Leisure Suit Larry and some other wines that you've done over the years. So what medium, so what kind of work do you personally like to do the most? Like is it radio, like character work, or like video games, commercial, like what is like, so what are some of the biggest differences of working between the different areas or the different fields of voiceover? What would you say?
Well, I do enjoy animation, especially if I get to work with other actors, which doesn't happen as much anymore. They used to want the full cast every session, every time. Now, sometimes you get pulled in and you just do lines in the clear and you don't get to work with anybody else. But for me, the fun is working with other actors and telling a story. I also enjoy narrations. Of course, I do those alone, but I love storytelling and I love to narrate. Um, games are a bit of a frustration in that there's no storyline and you work alone. At least I've never worked with another actor when I did a game. They were all brought in separately, and a lot of times you're reading lines and you have no idea what they even pertain to, and sometimes the person directing doesn't know what they pertain to. It's like, why am I saying this? Well, I don't know. So then you got to invent some kind of motivation for saying that line, and then do the line. um so I'm not as fond of game work as I am animation, but it's all acting. It's all rewarding in its way. And I guess after that would come commercials, and what else is there? Oh, promo trailer, which was an area of my career that sadly was never that big anyway. So, and I don't, I mean, uh, people who do promos and trailers, they make a lot of money, but it occurs to me it must be kind of boring because they get hired for the one or two or three reads that they do, and they just do the same read over and over again, plugging in different show titles and actor names. And I would think it would get boring after a while, just trapped in a room, essentially doing the same performance over and over and over again. But that's my take on it. And maybe I haven't done enough of it to really appreciate what it's about. But not that I'll
No,
turn them down, but yeah.
no worries. Oh yeah, I was gonna also mention earlier. So I know that the whole celebrity voice actor thing, because I know that it's something else that's been talked about. I mean, people are pretty. I mean, there's it could go one or two ways. The celebrity does a really good, can give a good performance, and but it also has led to like the standard practice where like if there's like a big animated movie, then you need to have like I don't know celebrities in order to bring in the money, or like that's gonna keep the crowd coming in. And I understand that, but at the same time, I know that with the reason of like events that have happened for like for certain movies where voice actors aren't really getting much credit, and I do sympathize with that and I can relate to that. So yeah, I will say that there have been celebrity voice actors. I mean, since we were talking about Charlie Adler, I guess I might as well just mention Tim Curry because they're both really close friends. And Tim Curry is a marvelous actor, really terrific performer. I'm hoping that he's getting better, but yeah, he's a really great actor who is also a very good voice actor as well. Like the way that he just carries a performance. And that's something that I also really loved about Robin Williams, just the energy that they bring into the roles. That they really they have this unique sound and quality to their voices and their to their deliveries that just really made the characters stand out and that they're very unique. So those two in particular, I would say, are like my inspirations when it comes to like celebrity VAs. But at the end of the day, I mean, I can see why some people are frustrated with like celebrities get top billing in like animated films. So I don't know. What are your takes on it on this with the whole celebrity voice actor thing?
Well, the business used to be bulletproof. Celebrities wouldn't deign to do that sort of work. And so we had it all to ourselves. But at a certain point, suddenly it became acceptable for celebrities to do that. And in they came. And, it is what it is. The ship sailed. There's nothing that I can do about it or you can do about it. And as you say, probably a lot of it is because the producers think, well, if I attach some big names to this project, we'll sell some more tickets, and maybe that's right. And you referenced Robin Williams, and that's the one I always mention. The work, particularly the work he did in Aladdin, was
Oh yeah,
brilliant.
one of my
I've
favorite
often said if
movies.
Robin Williams never became a star and just did voiceovers, he would have been one of the top people, if not the top person in voiceovers. So, I mean, I have no argument with that. Good Lord, I couldn't replace him. I don't know who could. But sometimes I see people being cast in these things that really don't bring very much to the table. It's a little bit of a different animal, you know. A, a, an actor on stage will do a performance different from if it's going to be on film. On stage, you have to reach out to that audience, all of the people in the cheap seats back. They've got to be able to hear you. You've got to speak up. A movie, they bring a camera in here, and I mean, you can talk this quietly, and everybody can hear you, and your face is, 20 feet high and 20 feet wide, so you don't need to do a whole lot of acting, and you have to learn that. Well, voiceover is a little bit of a different animal. They can't see you. You've got to do it all with this instrument. And some on-camera people get it in an instant, and they're wonderful. Others never get it, and the ones that never get it shouldn't be in these movies, but they end up in there anyway. And, it is what it is. We're not going to change it.
Yeah. um but yeah, just to get that little input because yeah, like I said, there have been some recent events that have happened where like voice actors weren't being credited. I mean it's kind of is the case. I mean thank God they actually listened to the crowd and they gave credit to I think it's the upcoming Sonic movie 2. I think Tails' voice actress actually got billing. She finally got her credit. So I'm like, yes, that is man next to Ben Schwartz
Mhm.
and whoever Knuckles Idris. I'm bad with names right now. Please forgive me.
Well,
But yeah,
the one the analogy I always use is if they were casting The Simpsons today,
oh yeah,
Nancy Cartwright and Dan Castellaneta wouldn't get invited to the audition, and they would end
yeah,
up going with some, you pick it, some famous on-camera person. How good would The Simpsons be? I mean, now
yeah.
everybody knows who Nancy is and who Dan is, and they would get invited. But I'm saying if everyone were stricken with amnesia and now they're going to cast The Simpsons today, those two wouldn't even be invited to audition, you know.
Yeah.
And it just shows you how the business has changed. And And I have seen many a project with a big name attached to it, and it's no guarantee.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I do remember that Dan actually had to fill in for Robert Williams as the genie for a couple of projects
Mhm.
before. Yeah, that's what I remember. So, yeah, and you were announcing, you've done radio announcement gigs for a very long time for a lot of different movies, and you were the announcer for the 75th telecast in 2003 and one in
Mhm.
2004. So you were doing Biography, Nova on PBS, Mars. Yeah. So yeah, have you considered like doing like audiobooks, or if you've done any out of curiosity?
Strange that you would ask. Um, I narrated this puppy, which is my own book, Vocal Recall: A Life in Radio and Voiceovers, which we can tell folks uh, where to purchase that at some point if you would be kind enough.
Okay.
That's the only book I've ever done, and boy, was that hard work. I
Yeah.
almost fired myself 3 times, and I'm not sure that I would ever want to do another book. That's work. I think it's a little more work than I really want to do at this point. So I think just the one book, if you please, unless somebody's offering serious money, because that's hard work. My hat's off to people who do that. It's not easy.
Oh yeah. I've had on other actors on my show, and when I asked them about audiobooks, they said that like, well, I mean, the money's fine, but like boy, doing the actual work is like especially when you have to like edit. I mean, if you don't have like somebody who can like a professional editor, then you have to do the whole thing yourself and you have to get
Mm-hmm.
the timing just right. It's oh boy. Because like I'm not even sure if I mean, good hats off for people who do this for a living professionally, but oh boy, yeah. If somebody is like offering me like a serious, like you said, I'm kind of in the same boat as you, where somebody gives me like offers like a good amount of pay, then I'll do it. But at the same time, it's like, my mental health.
Yeah,
I need to take care of myself physically. I gotta rest. I need to take care of my voice.
it's tough. I mean, the way I managed to get through the book was I only did it like an hour a day, you know,
Okay, that's a good thing.
and if I were hired by somebody else to do this kind of work, I'm sure they wouldn't, they'd say, no, 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 you got to be in the studio for 8 hours. And because we want to get this thing done quickly. And like I say, it's not an area that I'm particularly interested in pursuing.
Right. I'm kind of curious because you've also have voiced in, like I mentioned, radio and television commercials, and that's actually an area that I'm interested in pursuing more. Like, I don't want to specifically limit myself to just character animation video games. I'd like to explore and branch out a little bit. So, talk. You could talk to us a little bit about doing commercials for various clients that you've done over the years, and
Well,
promoting, of course.
voiceovers, there's no one job that's going to make you rich. the We got voice performers have to make it on volume. We have to work a lot of different things. And the more areas of the business that you're good at, the more you stand a chance of working. And there is a fair amount of money to be made in commercials. It's harder than it seems, because you're looking at copy that in a lot of cases is very retail, and yet they want it delivered in a friendly, warm, conversational, depending on the concept and where they're going. They want it acted, and it's hard to take some of these rather stilted lines and act them. It's one thing to be or not to be. That is the question, whether it is nobler in the mind, etc. So, you can sound good doing that, but Big sale at Foonman's on Saturday. Plenty of free parking in the rear. How do you make that sound? And yet some people do. A lot of the commercials I did, especially the radio stuff, was actually character work. It wasn't that different from animation. You just maybe the characters weren't quite as broad, but they used to do commercials where there would be a little story, a boss and talking to his underling, and the underling explaining, well, really, boss, we could do this. And, it would somehow lead into a plug for the product. And then the announcer would come in the last 10 or 15 seconds and lock it out. I did a ton of that kind of thing. But the spokesperson, it's a lot harder than it looks. And really, the only way you can do it is get a hold of some commercial copy and start practicing. What I would do is record an evening of television, network television, and then watch it, but don't watch the shows. Watch and listen to the commercials, and you will hear the types of people who are getting hired to do these things and the way they are doing them. And that maybe will give you a clue to how you can develop a commercial read that is marketable. And it keeps changing. I mean, I always call it the invisible dartboard. Just when you think, oh, now I know what they want, they don't want that anymore. They've moved on to some other approach. And now you got to learn that. It's it's not easy. I mean, find a good workshop. That would be my best advice. Somebody who's really good at helping you develop a commercial read, and then show up and do the preparation. It's the only way you can do it.
Yes, this would be good advice for making a demo reel. Would you say that?
Well, again, they have demo producers, which I highly recommend. When I started out, it was a little uh, sort of ad hoc community. There were engineers who would help you put a demo together. There were ex-radio guys like me who knew how to edit and had a little bit of equipment. I put demos together for friends of mine. At the TF Con last weekend, I was on a panel where we were honoring the late Jack Angel, who just passed away recently. And somebody said, Jack was so kind. He cut my first demo reel for me. And I thought, yeah, those were the days. Yes, of course. Yes, he probably had some equipment at home, and being an old radio guy, he knew how to edit. And so he did somebody a favor, bless his heart. But those days are gone. If you're going to be competitive, you got to have a damn good reel. And I think the only way to get that is hire somebody good. And there are a lot of demo producers around now. So that's the route I would go at this point.
Okay. Um, and how much would you say that the industry had changed since you first started working in it? Because you started around like the 60s and now moving up into the 2020s. How much would you say that it had really changed over these last like 60 or so years you've been in the business?
Well, of course, the digital thing completely changed what goes on in the studios. Um, I don't know. The one thing I could give you, which I put in the book, Vocal Recall: A Life in Radio and Voiceovers, available at fine booksellers nowhere. Um, when I first was trying to get in the business, there was a guy who ran a business casting voices. It was cleverly called the Voice Caster. And his name was Bob Lloyd, still is, as far as I know, although he's sold the business. But we were talking one day, and this was probably early 80s, somewhere in there. And he said, I figure there's, I don't know, 600 people doing voiceovers in town at this point to a greater or lesser degree. When I wrote the book, and it's been a few years now since I wrote the book, I got in touch with another casting group called Kalmanson and Kalmanson. And they were kind enough to share some information with me. And Kathy Kalmanson told me that she has on her computer what she calls the A list. These are the top voiceover people, in her opinion. And I said, how many people are in that list? And she said, it's about 30,000. And I said, oh, really? And that to me is it in a nutshell. We went from 600 people to 30,000. Uh, and now you can, send MP3s around the world in a heartbeat. In the old days, you had to record on a reel of tape and take it to the post office. That's how I got the part of Honest John in the movie An American Tale. I recorded an audition at my house and I put it in a manila envelope and I sent it to Mr. Spielberg via the postal service. And that's how we did it in those days. Now, as I said, you can send an MP3 anywhere in the world in 2 seconds. But I think as I said, it's just the sheer volume of people who are either getting in the business or trying to. Whereas when I started, as I said, way back at the beginning of this discussion, most people didn't even know voiceovers existed. I didn't know for many years.
Me neither.
And now, well, I remember Don LaFontaine, who was the big
Another
trailer
great
guy.
one. Yeah, in a world.
Periodically, they would do some feature on him on some television show him riding around in his limousine, going from session to session, making a fortune. And I would look at these and I go, thanks, Don. Another 10,000 people just decided to get into the business. Do you really need do you really need the publicity at this point? But yeah, the damage is done.
I mean, hey, at least, you're inspiring people to get into voiceover, but now this means more competition. Uh-oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we can also talk about getting into the union and yeah, because I know that you've done a lot of shows like animated projects and various video games. We can also talk about, because I know that people are discussing like anime or just and a bunch of other projects being unionized. So yeah, would you like to talk about you know, like the activities going on, like as it is right now, and like, is it necessary to be in one right now? Like, if you're gonna get to SAG-AFTRA, or like, if you're gonna go into other like other avenues of the unions that are in Los Angeles, what would you say? Or
Well,
like,
if you're going to do voiceovers in
yeah,
a serious way, I would say you're going to have to become a member of SAG-AFTRA because that's, most of the big projects are done through SAG-AFTRA. The two things I'm most grateful for in my career are my agents and my union. Without those two elements, I would have nothing. And, you know, if you don't have a union, then it becomes a race to the bottom. You got a producer. Well, you want 150. Well, I got a guy in San Bernardino who'll do it for 100. Well, all right, then I'll do it for 100. Well, I just found a guy in, wherever. He'll do it for 75. And and you're getting no residuals and you have no protection. I mean, if I do a job and they don't pay, I have a union that calls them up and says, hey, where's Mr. Ross's money? If you don't have a union, they can just tell you to go pound sand. They don't have to pay you. So, yeah, if you're going to have any kind of a meaningful voiceover career, joining SAG-AFTRA is mandatory, I would say. And it's not easy, but it's worth doing.
same as getting an agent, right?
Well, the major agents won't sign you unless you're in the union. I mean, that's just
Okay.
part of the deal. So, step one, union. Step two, agent.
Hmm. So I also wanted to ask you, how did you actually land your first, or like, how did you manage to get yourself an agent and joining SAG and whatnot?
Well, I joined AFTRA in 1969 when I went to work for KCBQ in San Diego. That was an AFTRA station in those days, and being a member of AFTRA was mandatory. And if you had a job at an AFTRA station, they would let you in. And then when I got to Los Angeles, I was able to join SAG through a deal that no longer exists. If you had a full-time AFTRA job, you could get into SAG, and I did have a full-time AFTRA job at the time. I don't think that's the case anymore. It's not that tough. You have to be offered a union job, and then that gives you the right to approach the union to join. And from that, it's just a case of paying, the dues and paying for the membership, and off you go. So I've been in AFTRA since 69 and SAG since 79. As far as the agent, boy, that's tough. That's why I say you've got to hire a professional demo producer, because they have their ears to the ground and they kind of know what the agents are looking for. You submit a reel, and it's always been this way. You call up an agent. I'm a talent. I'd like to see if you want to represent me. They say, send in a demo. And then what? Well, if you hear from us, that means we want you to sign. If you don't hear from us, that means we don't want you to sign. Well, if you don't hear from them, you don't get any feedback. And it's like, well, why didn't you sign me? What did you want to hear more of? What did you want to hear less of? It's a guessing game, but these professional demo producers hopefully know what the agents are looking for, and they can help you put a much, much better reel together. There is a bit of an investment to getting into this business. You got to pay to join the union. You've got to pay to get really slick demos produced. You've got to pay for workshops. The idea that, well, I'll just put a Audacity program on my computer and buy a microphone, and I'm in voiceovers. It's not that simple.
Oh, was that it?
Mhm.
Oh, I said,
That
was that it? Oh, I'm sorry. I think you kind of froze for a moment.
did I? I
Yeah.
I was not aware of it.
Oh, no. I was assuming that you were finished talking.
No, I was.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Sometimes Zoom would just act really weird all of a sudden. Yeah, sometimes. But yeah, thanks for the advice. So talking about conventions real quick. So what's been your experience about appearing at conventions as a guest and just your interaction with the fans? Like, how would you say the overall con experience is like for you personally, considering you just went to one last weekend? So we'd love to hear you talk
Yeah.
about
Well,
your
I
experience with
most of the time
cons.
I have a wonderful experience. People come up to tell me what the shows have meant, the characters, and it's a wonderful experience. I always look forward to doing them, and it's funny. I resisted it for a long time, but finally in 2011 I did a BotCon in Pasadena. Had a wonderful time, and I've been doing them ever since. And it's kind of an amazing phenomenon, to have people come up and want to hear about something you did, I don't know, 35 years ago. But no, it's great. I enjoy it every time.
Yeah, and considering that you just went to TFCon last weekend, how is it? I would have loved to have gone, but yeah, this time of year just it gets crazy around this time of year for me for some reason. But yeah, how was it for you? Because I also like to know how it was for you, considering, yeah, it just ended. And yeah, like to hear about
No,
it.
I had a great time. It was a lovely event. I always have a good time at the TF cons. Of course, that's a great show for me because it's mostly based on Transformers, and that's a big part of my resume. When I go to these general kind of cons, People come walking past my booth and they look at my name and they look at me, and there's just no recognition whatsoever. They've never seen the shows and they just move on. But everybody who shows up at a TF con knows Transformers, and so they know me. So no, it's a wonderful experience.
Yeah, doing the panels, like you mentioned, I know that there's, a lot of there's some preparation to going beforehand, but really, when you watch the panels and just being a part of one and just answering questions to the audience or genuinely interested in what you do, it's feels like such a nice warm feeling, and
Mm-hmm.
especially when you interact and meet with your fans and whatnot. So yeah, it's good to know that you're pretty much in good company there.
No, I mean the fans are wonderful, wonderful. Never had a bad experience.
Yeah. And of course, the convention staff just worked really hard to bring it all together. So, yeah, it makes for a nice, fun, rewarding experience. I mean, you do feel exhausted afterwards. You get the post-con fatigue, as what a lot of people say. But honestly, as long as you have a really fun time, a great time, then yeah, that's really what matters. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So let's talk about the future. So where do you see the industry going, with in the midst of this whole pandemic or everything going around? So where do you see like any more changes that are going to be happening to the industry going forward? Where do you see yourself in, like, I don't know, a year or so? And yeah, any future plans that you want to discuss about or talk about, if we're just going to talk about what the future
Well, I'm
holds for us.
I'm reaching the stage in life where I wake up in the morning and I look around, and if I don't see flowers and candles, I get up. Uh, at my age, the future is what was the great Jim Morrison line? The future is uncertain and the end is always near. I've reached the age where stuff happens. So I take it pretty much day to day now. And
Same, me too.
yeah.
Same here.
What's the future of voiceovers? Damned if I know. The one thing that I'm interested in is, assuming we ever get a handle on this damn pandemic, how many people will still be able to work from home, and how many producers will say, that party's over. We need you to come in. And I have no idea what will happen. I mean, a lot of people who swore up and down they'd never worked with some talent in a home studio had to. And it didn't turn, in some cases, I guess they had problems, but in a lot of cases, it worked out just fine. Will they go back to insisting we show up in a studio or not? I don't know. I don't know. Whatever they insist on, that's what we'll have to do because they're in charge. But I'm just curious to see if the pandemic will have changed that at all.
Okay. Yeah. And do you have like anything that you're like watching right now or you're tuning into, like anything that you like to recommend to the listeners out there?
Hmm.
Like any media that you're consuming at the moment?
Well, I just looked at because it was nominated for the SAG Awards. I looked at Succession, and I thought that was a great show. So if you have HBO and you haven't looked at Succession, I highly recommend it. Um, Gosh, what else? I've been watching the last couple of nights, and I was not really a big fan of his necessarily. I'd never seen this before. The documentary on Bob Dylan that Martin Scorsese did, called No Direction Home. It's not just about Bob Dylan. It's about that whole period in the 50s and early 60s. I've only gotten through about half of it. And the whole folk movement, which I'm sure people your age are not even aware of. And it's maybe because I kind of lived through that time. I'm finding it far more interesting than I thought I would. I thought I'll look at this for 10 minutes. And then I got caught up in it, and there was a lot of stuff in there I didn't even know. And an interesting period where this particularly American phenomena known as folk music suddenly broke through on a national level, and of course it catapulted Bob Dylan to stardom, and along with some others, but nobody really hit it as big as he did. And he claims he's not even a folk singer. So
Yeah.
it's I would recommend it.
Okay. So what's something about yourself that not a lot of people really know about that you like to share?
Um, I think I'm the only actor in Hollywood who's been replaced by both Tom Cruise and Mickey Rooney. Uh, you could just take my word for it, or I can tell you what shows were involved. But I think that demonstrates what a range I have as a performer, that I could be replaced by both Tom Cruise and Mickey Rooney. I don't know what else would be interesting. Oh, we're talking about things to watch. If we get picked up for another season, I insist that you watch Press Your Luck on ABC. If we don't, then you'll have to watch something else. But listen, my annoying cat is trying to get in. Do you mind if I let him in?
Sure.
I'll
We love cats.
come on in, you idiot. Yes. He wants to
Joining
go
us.
in this other door. I'll be right back.
Okay. Looks like we've got another special guest that will be joining us momentarily.
No, he changed his mind. He's just going to wander around and whine.
Okay.
If
It's
he comes
fine.
close, I'll pick him up and show him to you. But
Cameras, yes, fine. But I think we're almost done anyway. So
okay.
yeah, any future convention appearances that you'll be a guest appearing? Yeah.
Yeah, let me he's making his podcasting debut.
Hey, welcome to the business.
Yeah. Well, I was trying to bring something up on my computer. Oh, there it is. Okay. So I should have had this stuff written down somewhere, but lack
That's all
of
fine.
preparation. I'm going to be, hang on a minute. I'm going to be at the SAC Toy Con in Sacramento, and that's going to be June 5th, just the one day, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. And then this is way in the future, so you have lots of time to plan. I'm going to do the Nerd In Out Con at the Mayo Civic Center in Rochester, Minnesota, October 7th through 9th. So those are the two shows that are currently booked. Who knows? Maybe there's more in the future, but those are the two that I've got
Okay.
booked at the moment.
Yeah. So yeah, do you have like any last bit of advice that you'd like to give to
Yes,
anybody out
buy
there?
this book. It's absolutely essential that you buy this book. No, the truth is, I did not write this book for the money, and so far my plan is working perfectly. But if you find the idea of voiceovers and my life and how I got in the business and all sorts of inside stories about stuff that happens in recording sessions and all the rest of that stuff, you can go to a website, www.neilbook.com. You can find this book at Amazon. Just put in Vocal Recall Neil Ross, it'll pop right up. Or if you want the audio version, you could go to Audible and again put in Vocal Recall by Neil Ross, and it will pop up. And there is an audio version read by me. After exhaustive auditions, I ended up booking that job. And well, hopefully you'll enjoy the book.
Nice self-promotion there.
Thank you. Well, I have done commercials in the past.
Cool.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's a nice way to, get your book out there, at least on this little podcast.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Come on, Roger. You want to get on my lap? No. He doesn't know what he wants. Well, anyway. So are we done or
Yeah, we could just you could just say like if you like to share your social media or like if you have anything
oh,
else that you'd like to promote.
my
And yeah.
social media, such as it is. Well, I have the neilbook.com website for the book. Then I have my voiceover website, which is cleverly titled www.neilross.com. And that's really so buyers can listen to my demos. But if you want to log on and listen to my demos, I have no objection. And you can find me on Facebook, which is, I guess, the old people's internet. And that's about it. I don't go on Twitter because about once a week I open the newspaper and there's an article about somebody who said something stupid on Twitter and now has no career anymore. So I thought I don't think I'm going to go there.
Oh
It's like
dear.
having a hand grenade in your pocket if you've got a Twitter app, you know. You can you can destroy your life in a matter of seconds. And
Oh
I
boy.
don't think I want to do that.
Yeah, that's a whole can of worms that I am not going to go into here. But yeah, thank you so much, Neil, for stopping by and just to have a lovely little chat with me. So do you have like any parting words that you like to say to the audience out there? Either as yourself, as a character, just anything's free. The floor is all yours.
Well, this is Neil Ross, aka the Green Goblin, wishing you all farewell and good night.
That's it. Not very profound, but now I guess I click on leave.
Oh, no, I'm gonna close this out in just a little bit,
Oh,
but
okay.
yeah. But thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. You can watch this episode on my YouTube and other podcast platforms that I have. If you check out my Twitter, at Mystic IRJ, and a bunch of other social media platforms that I have. I know that someone is being incredibly active right now, so yeah, thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you guys next time. Stay tuned for more episodes coming soon, and more voiceover news and other related media. I'll also post on my various platforms, Twitter and whatnot. But yeah, check out the past episodes I did with Michael Bell and everything else, all the episodes that you find on SoundCloud and Spotify, Anchor, whatever I'm on. But yeah, this is Robert Jackson. You have listened to the Station Square podcast, and I shall see you guys next time. Until then, have a good weekend, good night, morning, whichever time zone you're in. And I'm out of here. Bye bye. See ya next time. Bye. So long. Peace out. And get vaccinated as soon as you can. Stay safe, stay hydrated, stay healthy, and all that whatnot. Anyways, dibbly wibbly bubbly, I'm out. Bye bye. 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 Bye.